Hello guys, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be creating a sports style thumbnail. Now to be exact, we're going to revolve this around the basketball theme, and I'll actually just try a few more styles in the coming weeks and we can just touch every single sports style thumbnail there is. Okay, so let's start off with basketball and let's begin. No wasting time, so let's create a new file, and we're going to keep the width to 1920 by 1080, keep the resolution to 72 and keep it to 16 bits, and let's just change the color as well and change this to a 50% gray. That's a good starting point, and click create. Okay, so let's run through the composition. This is one of the most important things in thumbnail design, just getting the composition right before you even begin. So what I want to do for this thumbnail is I'm going to have some divider lines, not straight. So obviously we have a divider line here, and we'll have one about here, and basically I want to have a main subject in the middle. This will be the basketball player in question, and then we'll have some other image right here of him playing basketball. So this image right here in the center will be just the subject enlarged, and then we'll have on the right hand side him actually playing basketball. We're going to reserve this space right here for the points that this player has scored, and so that's the general composition we're going with. Let's begin. Okay, so here is a cutout of the subject, and I've done this of course just to save you guys some time from having to watch me do it. So go ahead and cut out the subject, and I'll provide all of these images that I'm using in the description, so just go ahead and do that. And what we're going to do from here, once we've cut out the subject, is we're going to boost the subject. So this is going to entail a dodge and burn effect, and also using camera raw filter. So what I think we should do is start off with camera raw filter. So make sure it's a smart object, go to filter and camera raw filter. And for these types of thumbnails, you can really enhance and sharpen these subjects a little bit more than you would for other thumbnail designs. So for this particular style, do not worry about over sharpening, right? Of course, don't go crazy, but you do want to really boost the look of this subject. So first of all, let's just adjust the exposure maybe to 0.15, boost up the contrast. Yeah, that's looking good. 2+20. Let's try and boost the highlights slightly. Maybe we can do +5, and for the shadows we'll do -5. Yeah, that's looking good. Let's now move into texture, and this is where I'm going to just boost things quite a bit. So let's boost the texture all the way up to, let's say 40, and let's boost the clarity as well. So let's take this up to +15. Okay, let's also dehaze slightly just to get more of the color back in the subject. Maybe we could do +10 for dehaze. And now let's move into sharpening. So in detail, let's boost the sharpening up to 30. And while we're here, let's just increase the noise reduction a slight bit as well. So +5 for that. Okay, that's perfect. Click OK. And just with that one step, as you can see, this is before and this is after. So we've really enhanced the subject. Okay, so that's stage 1 complete, which is of course camera raw filter. Let's now move on to the second stage, which is the dodge and burn effect. So let's create 2 curves layers. Let's just duplicate them both. And now let's go ahead and press Alt or Option to clip both of these layers to the subject. Okay, now let's rename one of these layers to highlights and the other to shadows. And then in the highlights curves layer, let's just increase the highlights, and for the shadows do the inverse to increase the shadows, as you can see. Now let's just press Command or Control I to invert both of these layer masks. And now for the highlights, let's begin. So press B for the brush tool, make sure you have the white color selected, and we are going to change the flow to 10%, and also make sure you have a soft brush for this step. Okay, so now let's begin. Let's start off with the face, and all I'm really doing here is just boosting highlights where they already exist on this subject. And you don't want to be too harsh with this, just go over slightly, nothing too drastic. So go over the eyes, yep, these side lights on his face and neck, maybe some of the highlights on his lip, as you can see. Okay, let's move on to the body, on the neck. And all we're really doing here by just boosting the highlights and then boosting the shadows is just boosting the contrast of this subject. And this is what makes it pop out, especially from a distance. Okay, let's do this arm. And as you can see, I'm not doing too much, we're doing this fairly quickly. Okay, that's all you really need. So if I were to zoom out, this is before and this is after. Yep, so let's move into the shadows layer mask and do the same thing. Let's start off on the face and just boost the already existing shadows. So just going over the mustache, side profile of his nose, the eyebrows, some of the jawline, a little bit of contouring here, and now let's move on to the neck. And as you can see, I'm only adding a bit, not too much. We don't need to overdo it here. Okay, just following the lighting and just painting over. On this side, same thing. Yeah, that should do. Okay, so now this is before and this is after. So before and after. Just stands out a slight bit more than before. Now if we zoom out, as you can see, and we sort of squint our eyes, you can see that these spotlights, it almost looks as if we haven't cut out the subject correctly. So I just want to remove the spotlights from both this arm and this arm right here, as you can see. And so how we can do this is simply by creating a new layer. Let's go ahead and just rename this to keep organized, remove spotlights, and then go ahead and press B for the brush tool. Zoom in to the left arm, let's focus on that first, and all we're going to do now is make sure we have a selection of the subject active. So click Control, Command or Control, and just click on the subject to load up a selection of the subject. And then we'll go ahead and on our Remove Spotlights layer, let's just go ahead and use the color picker tool. So hold down Alt or Option whilst having the brush tool selected, increase the flow to 100 and paint over like so. So as you go along, try and source a color close to the region where you're painting in, and this is going to help it look more natural, as you can see. So sourcing and clicking, sourcing and clicking. Okay, now for a moment, I'm going to press Command or Control D to remove the selection. And as you can see, it's removed the spotlights, but it doesn't look too natural. And to just remedy this, what I will do is just decrease the opacity a slight bit. Maybe to something like 60%, so this is before and after. Maybe we can do 40%. So it's still there, but just not as strong. Okay, cool. Let's do the same on this side on the same layer. So load up our selection, Command or Control, and then just do the same thing we did on the other side. And remember, this layer is on 40% opacity, so that's why it's not painting it in completely. Yeah, perfect. Yep, so not too bad compared to before, so this is before and after. looking good. Okay, so now let's just quickly just group all these into one group. Rename this to subject just to keep organized. And now let's focus on adding in the divider lines, so one on the left and one on the right. Now we don't need to distribute the free spaces equally. It can be sort of unbalanced. The spacing of these lines you can go ahead and do at your own discretion, and it's really just a thing you have to gauge as you're creating the thumbnail, what looks good, how much space each segment requires, and you don't have to overthink it. Just make sure that you give enough space to all three elements. So just enough space for the subject to be playing basketball on the right hand side, and enough space to make sure that you can add in some visible text. So this is all stuff you can gauge in real time as you're creating the thumbnail. Okay, so let's begin. I'm going to use the marquee tool and I'm going to zoom in, and let's create a little selection to about 6 pixels in width, and then we'll just go all the way down. Just make sure it's at 6 pixels like so. So now we have our selection, and then let's go to adjustment layers and select solid color, and we can select a white color for this. So that's our line, and now we can right click and convert to smart object, rename this to line, and we can duplicate this, Command or Control J, and press Command or Control T and drag it over here. So we have 2 now, like so. We will focus on spacing in just a moment, but of course I think we need to give some space for this section right here. So of course maybe something like this should be fine, but you can adjust this at any moment in time. Cool, let's just leave it to something like this for now. And now let's focus on adding in the second image. Okay, so here is the second image. Let's drag this into our document. Click yes, and we of course need to place this on the right hand side below both of these lines. So as you can see, this is the line right here. Yep. So make sure it's behind that, and then let's go ahead and press Command or Control T and scale this down. Yep. Now let's try and adjust the position, maybe to something like this. Maybe we can even scale it up slightly. And this is all stuff, again, you have to gauge for yourself. Just keep experimenting. Okay, let's make a selection using the marquee tool. Make sure that it at least intersects with the line, so that now you can go ahead and press mask like so, and then just press Command or Control I to invert that part. Okay, perfect. Yep, and so this is looking pretty good. And if you'd like to go ahead and adjust, then of course you'd have to use the inverse color to get this region of the image back, which is why we are using a layer mask, so that we can work in a non-destructive manner. Okay, so I've positioned my second subject, and I think this placement is pretty good. I just went ahead and just did some more adjusting, and I'm pretty happy with this position. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to dim down the background but not the subject, and really you only want the viewer to just look at the subject, so everything surrounding the subject becomes noise. Now of course we do want him to look as if he's playing on a basketball court, so we are going to keep the background, but we are going to just dim it down so it doesn't take up too much attention. So the first thing we need to do is separate this subject from the background, and so what we can do is just simply select subject like so. Make sure you have the subject layer selected, and once the selection loads, just press Command or Control J to duplicate that selection. So now we have the subject on a separate layer. Now let's go back to our initial layer right here, subject 2. Let's rename this now to just background, and rename this to subject 2. And now on the background layer, what we will do is we'll go ahead and create a human saturation adjustment layer, clip it to the background, and from here we can do our adjustments. So for saturation, let's just decrease that slightly. We don't need to go all the way down to 0, but let's just take this down slightly, maybe to something like 26. So this is before, this is after, maybe even a little less, so -30 for saturation, and for lightness we can go ahead and take that down as well. to -30 as well. And just that one step alone makes a huge difference. So this is before and this is after. So you can see now that the focus is more on the player rather than the whole image itself. Now the viewer is going to just look at the subject and not really pay too much attention to the other elements in the background. Okay, much better. This is perfect. So we haven't completely just desaturated everything. You can still see that he's playing on a basketball court, but now the attention is more on the subject. Now with the first subject we did camera raw filter, so let's do the same for the second subject. So on subject 2, let's just right click, convert to smart object, and then go to filter and camera raw filter. And let's just enhance it the same way. So let's just boost the exposure, 0.1. Boost the contrast, 220. Let's go ahead and just boost the shadows, maybe to -5. And highlights to +5. Let's go into texture and boost the texture to +30. Boost the clarity to, let's say, +10, maybe +12. And let's just add a bit of a dehaze as well, so +15. And let's go to sharpening and boost that to 30. Perfect. Yep, and as you can see, that makes a big difference. Okay, so now let's go ahead and just adjust the skin tone just to make sure things match from a colors perspective. So as you can see with the main subject, this subject on the right, the skin is slightly more on the yellower side. And so I just want to make sure that both the skin tones match, just to make sure that all the elements look cohesive. So let's start off by selecting the subject. Let's go ahead and create a color balance adjustment layer. And all we really need to do here is just remove some yellows by introducing some blues. So add in some blues right here, make sure it's clipped to the subject, and then go to shadows, do the same thing, add in some blues, and then in highlights do the same thing. And now if I zoom in, this is before and this is after. So this is matching slightly better than before. Maybe we can reduce the blues a slight bit in highlights. Yep, so just keep it to 0 in highlights. And I think these skin tones match right now. I think as well for the subject, the main subject, let's also go ahead and create a color balance adjustment layer and clip it to the subject and just make sure we can match these perfectly. So this is slightly yellow as well. Let's just bring this subject to this color. Okay, so let's do that. Adding in a bit of blues in shadows as well. Yep, perfect. Looking really nice. Now with color matching in mind, let's also factor in that the basketballs are 2 different colors. So let's make sure that we match the colors of those just to keep things looking cohesive, like I mentioned. So I'm going to adjust this one right here. So let's go to this subject, go ahead, and we are going to use hue and saturation for this. Create a hue and saturation adjustment layer, make sure it's clipped to the subject, and let's try and adjust the color. Now, do not worry about all the adjustments that are changing the subject. We only need to look at the color of the ball in comparison to this one right here. So let's try and match the colors as best as we can. And after some adjusting, I've managed to get it somewhat close. It's not perfect, but it's close enough. And so let's keep it as is. So here are the settings. And what I'm now going to do is just invert this layer mask. So Command or Control I to invert. And we just want to paint in that effect only onto the basketball. So press B for the brush tool, have the white color selected, and in the hue and saturation layer mask, just paint in. And as you can see, that now only affects the ball. And make sure you're using a hard brush as well. So yeah, as you can see, this is before and this is after, so much closer now. Now let's move back to our layers panel and let's just organize things. So this background is actually the background of this image right here. So let's group this into its own group. Background, subject 2. Let's group the subject on the right hand side into its own group. Subject subject 2, and for the lines, let's group those into its own respective group, line, and for the main subject, we already have that grouped. Okay, perfect. Okay, now let's move on to some glow effects. So what we will do is use this image first of all and place it within this background segment behind the main subject. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's drag this into our document, and I found this image on FreePic and I'll link it in the description down below for you guys. Okay, so let's just turn this around, scale it down, and place this behind the subject group. Cool, let's see how this looks. And we can play with the rotation if we want, see what looks good. But this is looking pretty good for me. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. Okay, so let's just adjust this slightly. Like this. Okay, this is perfect. I'm liking how this looks. Let's also make sure to bring the line group above this background so that it doesn't overlap. Because, for example, if we left it as is and then we went over this, you can see it overlaps and covers the lines. So just make sure it's placed below this group and you won't have that issue. Okay, now let's focus on just enhancing this background, because right now it looks quite dull and it could really use some boost in colors. So the first thing I'm thinking to do is just adjust the color of this blue, the hue. So let's go to hue and saturation. Clip this to the background and let's just adjust the hue slightly. Yep, to maybe +9, and then let's adjust the saturation to something like +17. Yep, that looks good. I think we can also add an exposure layer on top of this, and this is really going to help boost the colors and make them pop. Right, because right now it doesn't really do that. So let's go ahead and increase the exposure. So let's take this to something like 0.90. So as you can see, this is before, this is after. It really boosts the colors. And let's see if we could do a bit of an offset. Yep, to something like this. So ever so slightly, you can see the figure right here. And so as you can see, this is before and this is after. So quite a drastic difference, just with a couple of adjustments. Okay, now let's group this into its own respective group. Let's rename this to subject background. And let's now move on to some glow effects behind the subject. So let's open up the subject group. Let's just create a new layer within this group and make sure to place it at the very bottom of the layer so that the layer is behind the subject. Okay, now on this layer, let's rename this to glow 1. And we are on this layer going to use the brush tool. So press B for the brush tool. Let's select a blue, a sort of lightish blue, something maybe like this. So here is the hex code for that, and then go ahead and adjust the blending mode to linear dodge add. Okay, let's make sure that we have a soft brush, and then with the marquee tool, let's just make a selection of only this region so that when we paint in some of the glow effects, it doesn't branch out into the other segments. That's not what we want. So now with the brush tool, we are just simply going to lightly tap behind the subject, just adding in the first layer of light. So just lightly tap around the subject, as you can see. Yep. Okay, now let's press Command or Control D to deselect, and so this is before and this is after, looking good. Now let's go ahead and create another layer. So let's create a new layer on top of this layer. Let's rename this one to Glow 2, and we are going to now do the same thing once again, but with a slightly lighter color than the blue we have right now. So just a lighter blue. Make sure that the blending mode is also at linear dodge add, and then decrease the size of the brush, and this one you just want to be close to the edge and just lightly tap around the edge. Again, make sure you have the marquee tool to make sure that you don't paint outside of this segment. And let's begin. Okay, so lightly tap around the edge of the subject. And let's just have a look. So as you can see, it's looking pretty good. Let's see if we can adjust the blending mode to something better. Nope, this looks good. And on this layer, we can just adjust the opacity to control the amount of glow on the outside. So if you want it less, just decrease the opacity. Let's keep it to something like 75%. Now we're not done yet. I'm going to do one more layer. So create another layer. Let's rename this one to Glow 3. And for this color, we are just going to select the color white and then zoom in once again. And we now have to have the smallest brush size for this one. And we're just going to go right across the edge ever so slightly. And now, as you can see, that creates this nice glow effect. And take as much time as you need with the step, no need to rush. Just try and make it look good. So yeah, just right on the edge of the subject, and do not branch out with this color. Okay, now let's focus on the third segment, and then we'll come back and add in the final glow effect. So let's just focus on filling out this left hand side. So what I have right here is a hex background pattern, and I'm going to drag this into our document. Make sure to scale it down, so Command or Control T to scale it down to size, and make sure of course it fits the dimensions of the segment. Let's place this layer below the line layers like so, and then just shift it to the left. Yep, let's just try and get these compressed as much as we can. Yep, to about this. And now I'm going to adjust the color of this background. So let's go to hue and saturation, clip it to this image, and let's just take the saturation quite low and decrease the lightness value as well. Okay, so let's have a look. Maybe we can increase the saturation. Maybe we could add a bit of a blue tint to this. Maybe to +6, and then just adjust the saturation. Yep, to something like this. So -37, and for the lightness, let's keep this to -60. Okay, looking good. So this is before and after, because we don't want this background pattern to take up too much attention, because we are going to add in some text. And so we want a contrast between the text and the background. Okay, so what we're going to have here is the points that this player has scored in this particular game. So I'm going to write in 40 points in big letters, and then we'll add in 3 assists also. So this section right here is really just reserved for his performance of the game. Yep, so I've just gone ahead and added in my text, something which I'm pretty sure all of you can do. So just make sure that when you're adding in your text, add a bit of a rotation to the text. As you can see, it's on a bit of an angle, so just simply transform and rotate it. As you can see as well, I've also added in some effects. So as you can see, gradient overlay, a simple light grey to white gradient on both of these numbers, and I've also added in a stroke set to size 5, position inside, and here is the hex code for that shade of grey. Now the font for the two numbers is Proxima Nova, black italic, and for the smaller text it's just a lighter weight of the same font, extra bold italic for the smaller text. Okay, now just make sure that when you're adding in text that you scale up the text to the correct size. So of course you want it to be large and something that a viewer can see at first glance very easily from a distance, right? Because this serves as visual context just by looking at these points and seeing the image of him on the basketball court. Most people will be able to make the assumption from looking at this thumbnail that this is the player's performance of a basketball game. Okay, so now let's focus on the final glow effects. So I just want to add some extra glows to the transition lines just to make things look more attractive, as we have some glows over here. So let's just finish it off with some final glows. So I'm going to open up the line group and let's just identify the lines. Yep, so this is the one. Let's just color this in blue, and now I'm going to create a new layer, place this behind the line layer for this one, and now let's press B for the brush tool, increase the size of your brush, and like we did before, let's use the marquee tool and just make a selection going through the line but selecting this whole segment so that anything we paint in it doesn't affect the other segments. Now let's zoom in. Let's press B for the brush tool, make sure we have the white color, and all we're going to do is just paint along the edge. So let's just try and maintain some distance and just paint along the edge like so, one straight line. Okay, now let's do the same thing but for this line. So all we need to do is let's just highlight the second line in orange, and now let's take this glow, let's rename this to white glow, and we are going to duplicate this white glow. So press Command or Control J to duplicate. Then you can press Command or Control T, and let's just drag this over here. Yep, exactly. So now we have the white glow placed behind both of these lines. And as you can see, I color coded both lines because these are the colors we're going to be adding in on top of these white layers. And it won't make sense right now, but it will do in just a moment. Let's go back to the blue line and let's focus. So what I will do now is I'm going to create a new layer above this white glow for the blue line. And I'm going to simply now just press B for the brush tool, select a color that I want to use. So let's select a nice light blue. Yep, something like this. Let's go ahead and change the blending mode to linear dodge add. And now let's make a selection once again. So let's make a selection of the region or the segment that we want to focus on. And now press B for the brush tool. And we're going to go over this white layer like so. Just go over like that, and then we can come back in, press Command or Control D to deselect, create a layer mask on this part, and then we can simply with the black color just paint out some parts we don't want. We can maybe decrease the flow to 20% and just sort of fade this out slightly. And this is only affecting the blue layer. Yep, as you can see. And then we can go ahead and just click on the white line right here, and we can add an outer glow like so. And we can change the color to white and just boost the opacity of this. Yep, looking nice. Perfect. Okay, so that's this side done. We can come back to this in just a moment. Let's focus on this side now. So same thing, let's create a new layer, make sure it's below the orange line, and make sure it's also above the white glow for the orange line. Let's press M for the marquee tool and make our selection of this region. Yep, perfect. And now let's select an orange color. So I'm going to pick this sort of reddish orange. Yeah, like so, and we're going to do the exact same thing, just paint over and make sure that the blending mode is set to linear dodge add. So make sure the flow is set to 100 and let's just paint over like so. Perfect. This is looking really nice. Yep, looking good. I don't think we need to paint anything out of this one. This is looking pretty good as is. Let's now just go ahead to the line and add the same outer glow. So let's just go to the first line, right click, copy layer style, and then go to the second line, right click and paste layer style. Looking really nice. Awesome. Now for this blue glow, I'm not too happy with how it looks, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove that layer and let's do this one more time and try and do a better job. So let's quickly marquee tool it, this selection, and then go ahead and press B for the brush tool. Select a more darkish blue, I think is what we needed to improve on. So let's pick something like this. Change the blending mode to linear dodge add and let's try one more time. Wow, much better. Yep, way better than last time. Okay, as you can see, I'm pretty sure you would agree that looks better than before. This is before and this is after. Much more vibrant. It looks really nice. Yep, looking good. I'm happy with how this is looking. Now at any point, if you do just want to change the color, all you need to do, for example, is just select the layer where you added color, go to hue and saturation, clip it to this layer, and you can just adjust the color from here to any color that you want. So yeah, let's try and adjust. And I'm really trying to match it with this sort of orange we have right here, just keeping it with the theme of the thumbnail. So just adjusting ever so slightly. Yeah, this is looking good. Let's go to the blue color and adjust that with hue and saturation, clip it to the layer, and then we can just adjust the color as we please. Yep, so this darkish blue is looking even better. Yep, maybe slightly less. Yeah, this is perfect. Okay, I'm really happy with how this is looking now. And the final thing that I want to add in is just a bit of accent colors in the corners of the top right and bottom left. Just a little bit of orange, just to spice up the look of this thumbnail. So let me just close this line group. Let's make a layer at the very top of all the layers. Close all the groups just to keep organized. And now I'm just going to rename this to accent color. And let's now press B for the brush tool, select a nice orange from here. Maybe we can make this more orange, more of a reddish orange. Okay, and now let's just add a bit of it in both of the corners. So something like that is what I'm trying to do. Lightly tap, let's see if we can do a better job. And this is not something you'll probably get the first time, of course, like always. Yep. This is not too bad, not too bad. Now, again, like we did before, you can adjust the color using a hue and saturation adjustment layer if you're not too happy with the color. So you can just boost the saturation, you can adjust the color, we can do a lot of different things. Yep, so this looks good, and then we can just decrease the opacity of this layer as well, just so it's very subtle, maybe to something like 54%. And now for the final step, which you may have guessed, which is camera raw filter. So let's go ahead and just select the top layer. Let's press Command, Option, Shift and E to merge all the layers in the layers section into one layer. Let's right click, convert to smart object, and let's go to filter and camera raw filter. Let's boost up the exposure to 0.1. Let's boost the contrast. We can do +10 for that. Yeah, looking good. Let's boost the shadows just a bit, so -5 for shadows. And now let's move into color. So let's just increase the vibrance, maybe to +10. Yeah, +10 for vibrance. Let's boost the saturation, but not too much, just to bring out some more of the colors, but not too much. So just +3 for saturation. And now let's go to effects. Let's boost the texture to +25 and boost the clarity as well. So boost the clarity to +10. Yep, looking good. Now let's go ahead and just dehaze one more time. Just 2 plus 5. Let's not add a vignette as we have these orange accent colors in the corners. That will be ruined if we add a vignette in. I think grain, we are going to leave that, and let's now go to sharpening. So plus 20 for sharpening. Yep, looking awesome, and I think that is all I'm going to do here. Let's click OK. And so there you have it, guys, a sports style thumbnail. Now I'm going to be making a couple more of these sports themed thumbnails in just the coming weeks, so make sure to subscribe to my channel if you don't want to miss out on that. Thank you very much, guys, for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Peace.